Hi, everybody. Welcome to session 5. We got Dee Dee and Carrie and myself here again. What I'm excited about is it's session 5, which means we've moved through 4 weeks of social distancing. Cool. Yeah. I was like, that's kind of a good mile marker. We've done that since the start now. I know, it's good. All right. So Dee Dee, do you mind just clicking to the next slide?
Sure. Hang on, let me get my little arrow. There we go.
Wonderful. So, you know, every session we remind all of us why we're here, and we do that just so we remember the bigger purpose of why we gather. So once again, we're getting together to keep ourselves connected and grounded, and to really keep our brains learning and engaging in something new each week. You know, the VUCA world, the volatile, uncertain, chaotic, ambiguous world that we're still moving through, and many are saying we may be continuing to move through for the next many months. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time to be here. We're excited for the content today. So go ahead and click to the next slide, Dee Dee. So the ways to engage today. So as a reminder, you know, whatever you want to do during the next 30 minutes to stay present and engaged, feel free to do it. Send Carrie notes, ask questions. We will make sure to get back to you. You know, take one action in between sessions. And of course, as always, as we always have done for the last 4 weeks, take some time to check in. So we're going to spend a minute just to get all of our voices into the chat box, or in the question box rather. So today we're just going to have you check in around anything you're present to right now. So anything you want to say or share that is true for you right now as we prepare to begin our time together. And we'll just give everybody a minute of silence here to be quiet.
What are you present to? What are you bringing to the call? What are you worried about? What's on your mind?
Carrie, is there a few comments coming in yet?
Yeah, they're coming in as we speak. Let's see. So Kristen shares, I am present to being full with work, homework. So work, homework, homemade food, and online meetings galore.
Yeah.
Vicky shares. Yes. Vicky shares, I'm present to not being my full best self with all the distractions. Mary shares, currently crying about grandkids and homework.
Yeah. Good.
Jean shares, I'm present to how much I love to learn from HLG, and I'm present to how much I miss hugs.
Sweet.
And
that's good.
Kathy shares she's worried about her wife who is a nurse at a hospital right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know collectively, I had a call yesterday with one of my clients, and we talked about it'd be so interesting to have like a collective like mood or pulse check as we all move through this ordeal together, because the feelings often are the same for many people as we move through all of this. So, you know, thank you for taking a few moments to check in with us. I know for myself, I'll check in. It's been a wild ride. I feel grateful that I have the team that I do and the tools that I do at my disposal. I'm thankful for these calls. Every week, Dee Dee and I get off, and we just are so grateful for these 30 minutes and what they provide. So thank you for being with us. Yeah. Dee Dee, anything you want to add in before we move into the content?
What am I present to? I'm so many Zoom calls. I'm really getting much more comfortable. They used to make me kind of anxious, but now it's like this is just my everyday. So I'm really grateful that I am getting more comfortable in the Zoom or WebEx or, you know, whatever, the virtual container. And so I'm present to like I'm not as anxious as I typically have been. So I'm checking in with.
Excellent. Good.
Right,
so
good.
Today, session 5, we're going to look at what's called the culture code. And it's really addressing the, you know, to use the word container, really the cultural container of our workplace and how we build that together. Dee Dee's going to be leading us through this session. I'm going to be just chiming in as needed. So Dee Dee, feel free to take it away.
Thank you, my dear. So I thought I would just go back and just remind us of the work that we've done these last 4 weeks, coming up on 5. So we started out with, how do you become the port in the storm? How do you get yourself steady and focused, which is really at the heart of any kind of leadership. And we wanted to kind of distinguish or talk about how we see leadership, how we see people being leaders. We actually believe every person is a leader, regardless of their title, regardless of their job. You are always leading people in something. Any conversation that you're having, you're leading people somewhere. So we want you to know that our definition of leadership is very large and very inclusive. The second session was spent on collaboration and the 5 ways that you can kind of start to build some skill. And so you can go back to some of those notes you may have taken. Our third session was on stress-based reactions, kind of the primal brain or the reptilian brain and what happens when we get triggered. And session 4 last week was the whole idea of how do we navigate an ordeal? How do we see ourselves as an everyday hero and keep looking for the gift with an open heart, open mind, and open will? So using some of Joseph Campbell's work and also Otto Scharmer's work. And so that brings us to today, the culture code. And as I launch into this, I just want you to know that working on or attending to your organization's culture, whether you are a company of 1 person or 10 or 1,000 or 100,000, culture very much matters, and you have the opportunity to influence it by the way you show up. A recent study by Harvard of over 200 companies showed that a positive or productive culture, a healthy culture, impacts net income positively 756% over 11 years. So those companies that had great cultures saw an increase in their net income over 11 years of 756%. So that tells us, hey, it's something worth paying attention to. It actually has an opportunity to change your bottom line and the way your company produces results. So let's launch into this by saying, here's the 3 questions that people are asking when they're wanting to learn about the culture. So if you think about anytime you've started a new job, anytime you've moved into a new neighborhood, any new experience immediately triggers our primal brain, our reptilian brain. And the reptilian brain cares about survival. So we're asking, I always think about as an organization development consultant, when you start a new team, the new team members, when they're forming, when they're first entering, are asking these questions. Am I safe here? Are there any dangers lurking? In other words, are there hidden elements to this team that I can't see? And what's my future with these people? In other words, can I make a contribution? Will they make a contribution? What will this add up to? So when we think about forming in teams, forming, storming, norming, and performing as the 4 stages of teaming, the forming stage is all about safety and essentially contribution. So if you remember all the way back from session 1, we talked about the primal brain, which is there's 3 brains. And if you remember, the primal brain or the reptilian brain, it grabs a hold of something fastest and first, and it wants to make sure that our survival is not threatened. So our job then as leaders, whether we're leading from a position of authority or whether we're leading as a peer or from time to time we lead as an employee, we need to answer those 3 questions as often as is needed to calm and ground our team. Now, all of that inside of our current COVID-19 quarantine situation, those questions are even more relevant. I saw in the check-in that a couple of people are worried about the larger perspective and our economy, asking questions like, is this business still going to be around? Am I going to lose my job? Will I have a job to return to if I've been furloughed? So grounding and calming is even more important right now in this current environment. Shannon, please feel free to jump in at any point, okay?
Yeah, well, the Primal Brain work is so fascinating because there was a study, and I'm horrible at remembering the study I read, but they talked about how the workplace is the modern day sort of saber-toothed tigers and fighting wild animals out. You know, it's like the workplace, the brain relates to it like it's caveman days. So those three questions, they were true at the dawn of humans and they're true now. And I do appreciate that it is our work right now to answer those for people often and every day. I consider myself to be in one of the safest workplaces I could ever dream to be in. And I notice every day I have to like, is everything going to be okay? Am I okay? Is it okay how I'm working? Like there's a lot of need for that right now. So I appreciate this perspective that we're moving into today. It's very timely.
Great. So I want to, before I move on, I want to show you, this is the book that we're drawing from. We use Daniel Coyle's work, The Culture Code. It's a wonderful book. I have all kinds of notes inside of it. So when I'm working with the team and helping them to advance their team culture, I often draw on his work. So that's important. All right, so how do you do it? Here, we're going to do this in quick little 18 minutes. How do you create a great culture? This is like speed culture. So the very first thing that you must do in your team is to build safety. And that sounds challenging, and we're going to break it down a little bit to say kind of how you might think about that in manageable steps. But what's important to know is that the amygdala, you know, back to brain science, the amygdala is usually the part of our brain. It's an almond-shaped nodes right behind the ears in the brain. It is on high alert. It's watching for danger. And so we think about it like the guard dog. It will sniff out danger or you know, safety breaches for fastest and first. However, what we're learning with brain research is that when the brain receives a belonging cue, which is to say, once it starts to calm down, the guard dog calms down, it actually becomes, the amygdala becomes a guide dog to connect you to your people. So once you feel like these are my people, this is my safety net, this is where I belong, all of a sudden the amygdala changes its role from guard dog to guide dog and will guide you back to your people, which is super important. And we never knew that about the amygdala till now. All right, to access that, however, what you have to do is send belonging cues. So what we want to do is get that guard dog to back down, and we want to start sending belonging cues. So here's what they look like. We can send belonging cues that have to do with our energy. So I was just on another call previously where I was saying, how do we show that we're energetically belonging or connecting into a conversation when we're on a virtual platform, when we're on Zoom or when we're on WebEx or Microsoft Teams? Well, certainly by not multitasking. I mean, there's some like dumb basics, right? Don't multitask. Don't be, if you can, eliminate any distractions. Show that you're fully present and that you're invested in what's occurring, that this matters. So that's number one. And people, you know, I'm curious about how we measure energy inside of the virtual container, because when you're with somebody, can't you tell right away energetically when they're not present? Like I pick up on it really fast, and I know lots of people do. But how savvy are we about that in the virtual container? That I'm not sure. Second, we call it individualization. You know, treat the person like they're unique and valued. Listen intently. And so there's all kinds of ways that we can show that we're listening. And those tell the person, I care about you. I see you. I hear you. I'm listening. I'm right here. So those are that's a way that we can send belonging cues. And then third, we can speak from a future, signaling that the relationship is important and it will continue. I can remember in the early days of dating my husband, I remember he started talking about the future and using the word we. You know, well, when we buy a house, when we do this thing. And I remember sort of thinking, oh, he is seeing us moving into the future together. I must belong to him and to that future. And I thought it was very brave of him to be doing that, but that's the signal that he saw this relationship as super important.
Mm-hmm.
So Shannon, I'm going to take a breath and let you talk for a second.
Yeah, so I posted a question to you all, and I don't know if you saw it or not, but I'd be curious which of these are resonating for you. You know,
Oh.
Where do you notice your own belonging cues? You know, how does it show up energetically? And, you know, what works, what doesn't work for you? What are you doing? What do you notice maybe has been done for you around these? I know for myself, anytime right now someone acknowledges that there are kids outside my door right now, like during a Zoom call, or that they include my personal circumstances, I instantly feel calm and included in a different way. Like all of a sudden I'm like, oh, they see me. They're, you know, it's a call out of what's true and unique about my circumstances right now, which may be very different than other people's. So if you have a thought about that, I'd love to hear a bit in the chat box about that for you. And I love the distinction we. I know I've heard leaders talk about what I'm going to do or what's on my plate, and really it is a collective experience right now. So I think that's an important distinction. Great.
That's great.
Cameras on during meetings, eye contact, smiles, head nodding.
Oh, great. Oh, yeah. I've got. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the belonging cues. Well, while we're waiting for people to type that in, typically belonging cues look like making eye contact. You know, proximity, being close to people. Mirroring, which is just, you know, where you kind of mirror. You know, well, here's what I think I heard you saying, or what I heard you saying. Vocal pitch can often indicate belonging. You know, I can sound interested. I can make sure that my tone is interested. And then what Daniel Coyle talks about in his book, turn taking. So watching out for interrupting, which is hard. It's hard to stop in the virtual environment because, you know, we don't have some of the other cues to show us that someone is just about to speak. So it's only when they start speaking that we, oh, sorry, you go ahead and go first. So turn taking also is an indication of belonging, like, and even calling out people. Carrie, you know, what is there, do you have any thoughts about this, et cetera, et cetera?
Great. One of our participants said that one of the most energizing conversations they've had recently is just around anything around the future, like future planning. So I think that's an important thing. As Dee Dee said, I remember you said like a month ago, like, there is a future beyond this.
Right.
There is a future out there. Yeah.
August,
all right, great.
August is a real possibility. All right. So cultural leadership skill number 2. Shannon, is it okay for me to go to this?
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's great.
All right. So this is in our culture, vulnerability is a big darn deal. We expect it. It's a deal breaker if people aren't willing to be vulnerable. I learned something from Patrick Lencioni a few years ago. He said, building trust doesn't take time, it takes courage. And I always loved that because vulnerability is necessary before there is trust, before there is evidence that you belong. So you have to be willing to take a risk and put yourself out there and show that you're human, show that you need help, you know, especially if you're a leader, kind of showing that you're not impervious or that you're not perfect. So that people in the culture, people in your team have a sense of we're all in this together. We all can help one another. No one is above or below. So sharing vulnerability, it just means to share your humanity, you know, kind of sharing more of yourself, not less. So Shannon, I welcome what you said about, you know, I have kids just on the other side of this door. I was on a call on Saturday evening, and one of the participants had 3 kids that were fighting right outside the door. Well, that's a very different thing than I have complete silence in my home because it's just my husband and I, but it's important for me to include, oh gosh, she's got a massive distraction happening out there. And I was so grateful that she shared that and was honest about what was happening so that we could include it and change the way we were doing our work together in that team session. All right, so I think one of the ways that we call forth vulnerability is by using questions. So we do questions in check-in. We may have a question that we put into our team. So these are just a couple of questions. We actually have a little file of, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of questions that we love. Now we're coaches, so of course we love questions. But you can see that these are some questions that may evoke vulnerability and sharing. In order to evoke vulnerability, you have to ask a question that doesn't necessarily have to do with the task or the project at hand. You have to get outside of that. So these are some questions. All right, so let's see. Let's move on to cultural leadership skill number 3. And this does have to do with establishing purpose, helping people to remember the larger idea that they are participating in. And in order for people to feel like they belong, they have to see themselves inside of that purpose. So you have to make it safe for people to say, you know, this is not the bus I thought I was going to be on. You know, I'm going to go ahead and get off here. This isn't what I want to work on. You want to be crystal clear about where you're headed and why it matters. And share that often, share it in your team meetings, share it publicly on your website. Some people attach it in their email, you know, signature. But once you are clear about your purpose, you keep reminding people so that they can locate themselves inside of that future that you've created.
We talked a bit about this in session 2, sort of the idea of a compelling purpose. And, you know, there's like the big purpose. And as we said, sometimes there's the purpose for the next 30 days as we move through this together. So
right.
There's, it's to anchor us. It's to keep us steady during these times.
Yeah, exactly. I love that, Shannon, because we may need, you know, right now, while the future's so foggy, we may need to bring our sights in really close and establish a purpose for the next 7 days. You know, we don't. We live near where we can see Puget Sound and a lot of these big ships moving up and down in that in the sound. And when it's really dense fog, all of the ships slow down and sound their foghorn over and over and over, like, we're here, now we're here, now we're here, now we're here. And that allows others around them to locate them and avoid a crash, right? But that's a little bit like what we're navigating right now, is we're slowing down and we're sounding a foghorn so that those around us can find us. And as leaders, that may be the most important work. You know, right now I'm trying to be in communication with my team a lot every week. You know, Shannon and I FaceTimed yesterday afternoon, which I just loved. But you need to be in, you know, sounding that foghorn, so to speak, over and over and over again, because people do get lost. They get off track. They get distracted. They get fatigued. They get worn down. So you helping them to find their path back in through that fog is an essential leadership skill.
That's great.
All right, so let's see. You know, every company, every team has a culture. Why not create a culture of belonging and safety? I mean, what the heck? You might as well create a good one. But culture is going to happen with or without your intentional work on it. And we get hired by people who didn't create a culture. We get hired by people who let culture happen, and now it's a big hornet's nest, and we get to go in and help fix it. So, you know, that works too, but I would be more intentional about the culture. All right, so here's what we have found is that great cultures have close physical proximity, often in circles. That takes on a whole new meaning when we're talking about a virtual environment. How do you maintain close proximity energetically when you're virtual? Profuse amounts of eye contact, so making eye contact with the camera. Physical touch, clearly that is off limits right now. We don't get to do that for a while. Sorry, no fist bumps unless you both have gloves on and you're going to throw them out afterwards. Great cultures have lots of questions, few interruptions, intensive active listening, lots of short energetic exchanges, no monologues, nobody droning on and on and on, lots of laughter and humor, and small courtesies, small thoughtful courtesies. So these are some of the things that may help guide you as you create a healthy culture. I'm looking at how am I doing for time? Am I okay?
We're good. We got about 4 minutes. We're great. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Good.
So I thought we might just, even in the question and answer, you know, what's one virtual ritual of connection you can think of for your own team now that we, you know, we're not able to be physically together? So based on all this and maybe what you've known in your own gut, what's one ritual of connection you could imagine trying on this week? So I'm just going to stop for a moment and let you think for just a moment and then type that into the Q&A.
Can you go back to the previous slide, Dee Dee? Just because I think that's such a great list for inspiring some ideas.
Great.
And, you know, as you think about this, you know, what's so important about culture creation is you notice that this whole presentation has really been about who we are as humans, who we are being for each other and how we're behaving with each other and how we're engaging with one another. And it's now more than ever, we need to be paying attention to that, you know, as we elevate our compassion and our connection with one another. And when we can't just rely on physical proximity and some of the other things that perhaps were crutches in some ways, like we just assumed it was there because we are all in the same office together, just not so anymore. So there is a pretty remarkable opportunity for culture building right now. And you know, that we actually get to say, how do we want to work differently and how do we want to work with each other during this time? And what I always love about all of our work at Henley is you can use it at home too, which is so relevant. I'm like, what's our culture creation project for home right now? Because we can storm around being stressed out and overwhelmed, or maybe there's something else we could be doing around here. Good.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm going to read a few of these, Dee Dee. Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, great. Appreciations for people at home and at work, like doing that. One person tried checking in with an item in your home that you have a new appreciation for. Oh, that's sweet. I like that. That's a great check-in. More eye contact.
Right.
Send emails to supply an update of what's happening and include thank yous. Yes, thank you notes, updates, more communication, the better right now. Absolutely.
I love it. That's great.
A conversation, what brought you joy yesterday? So just a quick check-in around that would be great. Fun game, virtual check-ins, all of these are great. Morning coffee together. I've actually taken to that. It's been kind of fun. Like, let's do a FaceTime coffee real fast. Yeah, good. I love it. There's tons more. Lots of great ideas.
Great. Good. So our challenge to you is to implement one new ritual of connection for your team or your family. You know, I should say team/family because we're doing a whole bunch of work with families right now too. And then second, if you don't have a clear vision or purpose for your team, get busy creating one. As we said, maybe it's just for this next 30 days, or maybe it is a reminder of the larger future that you're participating in, that 1 year or 2 year out. I know I'm kind of grounding myself in that larger vision, and I keep imagining and seeing us, you know, moving powerfully and beautifully through this COVID-19 time and coming to a very bright and gorgeous future. So that's an important piece for me to hold on to personally.
That's great. There's a few people that have said that they love the idea of the short-term purpose.
Great. Good.
I mean, I know our team just did it this week. We just said, you know what, the big future is really unpredictable right now. What can we count on, and what can we really work toward in the next 30 days? And we know that we can. And it was an energizing game to play. So I say go for it.
Great. Absolutely. Yeah. And feel free to do a 7-day game or a 7-day purpose if it's that foggy. Just shorten it up.
24 hours sometimes. That's like good. All right. Great. So thank you, everybody. We're going to see you next week for session 6. Be well, reach out if you need anything, and take good care.
Have a good week.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.